Welcome to the City of Tullahoma Planning Commission. This is the Monday, May 15th meeting. I'm Chairman Paul Schwer, and at this time I'll call the meeting to order, and I guess I can do that. And looking around the room here, it looks like we do have a quorum. Mr. Hall and Mr. Sellers are absent, but we have 5 present and 2 absent. At this time, I'd ask everyone to rise, and Mr. Hall will lead us, Mr. Rice will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. Read and approve the minutes of the regularly scheduled meeting, the Planning Commission held on April 17th. At this time, I'd ask the Commission to review the meetings in your packet, or the minutes in your packet, and I'll entertain a motion to approve. I had a motion from Mr. Berry.
Second.
Second from Mr. Rice. Any comments? All right. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, the minutes from April 17th pass. That's 5-0. And then the special call meeting on April 19th, 2023. I'd ask you to review those minutes in your packet, and I'll entertain a motion to approve. I got a motion from Mr. Berry.
Second.
Second from Mr. Rice. All in favor of approving the minutes? Aye. Aye. Opposed? All right. Also 5-0. All right. At this time, we'll entertain general public comments for items not on the agenda. Anyone from the public wishing to speak on anything in the purview of the Planning Commission may come forward and use. You get 3 minutes, and please state your name and address. All right, seeing none, we'll move on. Reports from officers and staff. Ms. Samaniego.
Thank you. The only thing I have to report is at the May 8th Board of Mayor and Alderman meeting, which was last Monday, they approved the first reading of the revised 2011 plan. So then we will be taking that back to the Board of Mayor and Alderman on the May 22nd public hearing for a second reading. Other than that, that's all I have to report.
Which version did they approve?
They approved the version from the Community Plan Development Committee with the changes to remove the one appendix with the demographics referencing the 2040 plan, as well as to allow mixed-use projects on that section of Cedar Lane.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Mary. All right, there is no old business, so moving on to new business. Subdivision plats. These are public hearings, so we'll start with number 8A1, Lincoln Station, major subdivision preliminary plat. A plat to create 49 lots from the existing 28.4 acres at 1800 North Lincoln Street, and the applicant is Lincoln Station, LLC. At this time, I'd like to invite the applicant to come forward and tell us about their project.
Hello, my name is Kimberly Flood. I am with Womble and Associates, the engineer on the project, and I also have with me William, who is the client, and Mr. Womble. So, like you said, it's going to be a residential project with 49 total lots. 48 of those lots are going to be single family, and we have 1 duplex lots. We're going to keep the existing zoning of R2 with 10,000 square foot minimum lots, and then the duplex lot of 20,000 square feet. The density for this is 1.73 lots per acre. With the duplex lot, it's going to be 1.76 units per acre, and we are leaving 12.96 acres of open space.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, this is a public hearing, so at this time, I'll open the public hearing for anyone of the public that wants to come forward and speak on the Lincoln Station preliminary plat. Seeing none, I will move to the staff report. Mr. Rush.
Yes. Lincoln Station, zoned R2, property size is 28.4 acres. We're creating 49 lots, 48 of those will be single family, one will be duplex, meets all subdivision regulations, as well as zoning. Connectivity is 2.0. Flood and wet plains are located, but no lots are going to be on those. TUA will provide electric, water, and sewer. Staff recommends approval
All right, thank you, Mr. Rush.
with staff conditions.
Yes, okay, thank you. All right, at this time, I'll entertain a motion. Mr. Berry?
Motion to approve with staff recommendations.
Okay. Second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Rice. All right, discussion?
Yeah, what are the staff recommendations exactly? Where are they?
They're on page 8 of your packet.
Page 8.
Yep, 8 and 9.
Well, that's what I'm looking at. Oh, okay. It's on the back side.
Engineering comments and TUA has comments.
Okay, so I did see that there were 2 methods of egress. Is that just an easement that runs along there, or is that an actual, is there a standing road there, or is it, what is, like next going to Silver Street? Is that what I'm looking at? On page, I guess it'd be 11. Is that the same one? Yes. This is the plat, correct?
Yeah,
yes.
both entrances, I think, are on East Lincoln.
So it's showing a road there from Silver Street going in.
That's just the,
Look at this one.
Okay.
yeah, that's just a lot dividing, division.
And I noticed that a lot of this was in the floodplains, and of course, they have the 12 acres of the wetland sectioned off, but since the floodway runs right through there, how can we be sure that, won't affect that row there on the end?
Scott?
So there is floodplain.
Mike, I'm sorry, sir.
Sorry. So there's floodplain and floodway shown. It's blue on my sheet, maybe blue, and then there's a section of wetlands in green. But there is additional common open space listed as OS1. If you see that bubble, the white bubble, so there is all of that area that contains wetlands as well as stream buffer and floodway is within that open space. There is a 100-year floodplain line also that is contained by the blue. So based on elevations in the FEMA flood map, the base elevation, all of this open space is containing wetlands and FEMA floodplain.
Okay, it just seems like it's, we're stacking a lot of density right there in the midst of a lot of, potential waterway with our stormwater drainage issues and things.
Yes, so the regulated floodway and the floodplain are established by FEMA based on
Right.
firm numbers, base flood elevation, and so that's what, based on field run topo, they've determined that it is out of, the lots are out of.
Well, yes, I understand that they're out of it, but
Okay.
I'm more concerned with the potential ramifications of this many houses that close together with our current stormwater drainage issues. And, what other safeguards do we have in place to protect the individuals who may purchase those lots?
So just that 100-year analysis by FEMA, so that's I know I'm repeating myself there.
Yeah.
So yes, that is,
It just seems like it's pretty high density, and I understand that it's, classified as R2, and this may be the appropriate place for it. I'm not familiar with that land, or how swampy it is over in that area specifically, but I do have concerns with the density.
Thank you, Mr. St. John. Mary, just as a kind of a side topic, maybe not topic, but there was we had looked at doing a kind of a flood stormwater analysis, like state, or not statewide, but citywide, something. I'm drawing a blank at the moment, but there was some funding somewhere.
Yes, I believe that through the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, part of the American Rescue Plan funds was to do a citywide drainage study.
Do we have the status on that, or is that still on the?
Mr. Scott might, Mr. John, St. John might have that, sorry.
it is still, we're waiting for those ARP contracts to come through. The Public Works Department has been updating that program manual, and those contracts, they say, have been approved, but just the written contract should be coming to the city. And that one of those, yes, is a master stormwater development plan, and it will review a large number of areas across the city.
Okay, all right, thank you. I think that may be kind of towards more what Ms. Almarker was looking for, but I mean, and your engineering assessment is essentially that this meets all the stormwater regulations and floodways and stuff like this, and the insurance companies will assess their risk based on that.
Based
Okay.
on FEMA
All right.
floodplain.
All right, thank you. Anything else for? All right. I'll call for the vote then. All in favor of approval with the approval of the Lincoln Station major subdivision preliminary plat, with subject to staff comments? Aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Okay. All right, 6-0. All right, moving on. Yes?
I'm sorry, not going to be difficult, 5-0.
5-0, I'm sorry. No, I appreciate that, thank you. I almost did it twice already. All right, item number 2, Turkey Creek Estates, major subdivision preliminary plat. A plat to create 8 lots from existing 8.63 acres at 872 Holt Lane. Applicant is Mr. Joe Denby. I'd invite the applicant to come forward and speak if
I'm Mandy Bobo with Northcutt and Associates. Mr. Denby couldn't be here tonight. He just wants to make 8 single-family home lots on that one corner. And I know that Mr. Northcutt had called Mr. St. John today for some clarification, and he updated the plat accordingly.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Denby's right behind you, by the way.
Hi! I've never met him. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Ms. Bobo.
Okay.
This is a public hearing, so at this time I'll open up the public hearing. Anyone that would like to come forward and speak on this is welcome to for 2 minutes. All right, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and turn it over to Mr. Rush for the staff report.
Yes, thank you. We'll go to the PowerPoint presentation. Turkey Creek, R1 zone, creating 8 lots. Every lot is over an acre, which is 44,000 square foot, plus or minus. They meet all subdivision ordinance, as well as the zoning. There is a 175-foot wide TVA easement that'll run on the back of those lots, facing Turkey Creek Road. Electric, water, and sewer will be by TUA. Staff recommends approval with the conditions outlined.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I don't have that page either. That page is missing from our packages. Oh, but
I think maybe it was zoomed in, we got a part of it.
Page 13.
oh yeah, yeah, you're right. We're just looking at, actually, what's zoomed in is not on this slide here.
Yeah.
Oh, well, it's a printing problem.
Yeah.
They got the
We
vicinity.
have it, it's just
What
kind
they have.
of, we only have the very
You
top.
can't see the actual plots. You see like the top left-hand corner.
You just see the,
I printed it at 24 by 36.
yeah.
I didn't notice.
So,
It's okay.
All right. All right, so it looks like there's 8 lots across the backside of Holt Lane there, adjacent to Shea subdivision or whatever, I think, something like that. Okay. But just a quick question, refresh my memory, was it last month or the month before we had, I think they subdivided
Yes.
this in half already? Okay.
Correct.
Okay. All right. All right, this time I'll entertain a motion for the Turkey Creek Estates.
Motion to approve, subject to staff comments.
All right.
Second.
Second for Mr. Comer. Discussion?
Yes. Okay, so right there on that whole line where you can see on that map, I'm assuming that's where that barn dominium burnt, and isn't it?
Yep.
Okay, and so remind me what we did. We subdivided half of this already, and is this something, it's the same, we're talking about the same lot, but doing something different with it now?
So pretty much, yeah, the last one that came forward, we were making a lot 1 and 2, now we're making that lot 1, 8 total different lots.
And, I mean, since we can't, do you have it up there? Can we see it up there, the 8 lots?
There.
So is there 1 egress, 2 egress? How's it coming out? Is it just coming off of Holt Lane into the subdivision?
There's no new road.
Yeah, go ahead.
Each individual lot won't have a driveway off of Turkey Creek.
Off of Turkey Creek? Okay, I see.
There's no new road coming in, yeah.
So he's like
Exactly,
chopping them that way? Okay.
right. And because Turkey Creek is a collector, they are going to have a turnaround for each individual driveway, so then you would pull in, and instead of people having to back onto a collector, you would have like a T turnaround in your driveway, so you pull straight out forward. It's one of our requirements in our subdivision regulations.
So what size is this whole lot, that 9.01 acreage? How many acres is that total?
8.67, I believe.
That's only the part that they're subdividing, right? I mean, there's actually that's not the entire lot.
No, that is the entire lot, because we already subdivided it previously.
So we're not undoing that subdivision. I guess that's what I'm asking. Is this like we're doing something completely different?
Do it. Okay. So it was, if you look at page 16, it was one large lot, and then they cut it in half. And now the northern half, we're further subdividing in 8 lots. So the big piece to the south is the one that was all TVA easement.
Okay.
So we're not undoing that, we're further subdividing one of those lots that we created last month.
Okay.
Any other discussion?
Looks like a good place.
All right, with that, I'll call the vote. All in favor of the Turkey Creek Estates major subdivision and preliminary plat, subject to staff comments? Aye? Aye. Opposed? All right, motion passes 5-0. All right. Moving on to item number 3, 424 G Road, minor subdivision, a plat to create 1 lot from existing 22.99 acres at 424 G Road. The applicant is Mr. Bradley Broderick. At this time, I'd like to invite the applicant to come forward and speak on his plans.
He had to step out to the bathroom, but almost a while. We're just trying to sell 2 acres to his cousin, so off of our land. So that's pretty much for them to put a place.
May I get your name, please?
Paige Broderick.
Paige Broderick, okay, thank you. All right, this is a public hearing, so anyone from the public that would like to speak on the G Road minor subdivision, please come forward now. All right, I'll close the public hearing and move on to the staff report. Mr. Rush?
Yes, we'll go to the PowerPoint. It's a final plat, create 2 lots currently in the UGB, which is on RS1, Coffee County. Lot 1 is going to be 2.2 acres. The remainder of the lot will be 20.77 acres. We have a TDEC septic system approval. Lot 2 is exempt from subdivision review for Tennessee Statute 13-3-401. Since it's over 5 acres, staff recommends approval with conditions.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Rush. This time I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second, is that with staff comments?
Subject to staff comments.
Okay. So we got a motion from Ms. Almacher and seconded by Mr. Berry to approve with staff comments. Any discussion?
So this one's been, one of them that's been delayed for a while because of TDEC, so we finally got the TDEC.
Yes, we did. After about 6 months, they finally got through TDEC, and I appreciate the Broadrick's patience. I've been trying to work with them this whole time, so congratulations.
There was 2 of them. I didn't know if this was that one or not. So, okay. All right. Good deal. All right. Anything else?
Okay.
All right. I'll call the vote.
After you vote on that, I have something to mention about the one that you just approved a moment ago, if I might, please. After you take the vote
Yes.
on
Let's
that.
finish this up and then we'll come back. All right. All in favor of the approval of the G Road minor subdivision, subject to staff comments? Aye? Aye. Opposed? All right, 5-0. Mr. Worship, you have the floor.
Yes, sir. Relative to the subdivision that you all just approved just before this one, the plat that was put up on the screen here was a little different than the actual approved plat, and Mr. Denby's attorney here, Mr. Seagroves,
No, I just want to make
has
sure.
this one. To make sure that you all see the right plat, you may want to revisit your vote again, but there's a little bit of discrepancy between the
Let
two.
me recognize Ms. Samaniego. It is a preliminary plat too, so we're kind of, Ms. Samaniego.
Thank you. It's typical, so the staff report was written off draft 1, and in the staff report, we had conditions of approval of changes that had to be made.
Okay.
Those are those changes.
Okay. And
So they voted to approve draft 1 with these conditions, so their vote was appropriate. You've made those changes early, thank you, and then I will sign it whenever you bring it to my office.
Very good.
Thank you very much. We just want to make sure we got it right.
All right, thank you. All right. All right, moving on to item number 4. Roberts Fairview School minor subdivision. A plat to create 2 lots on 5.00 acres at 285 Fairview School Road. Applicant is Mr. Chris Bateman. I'd invite the applicant to come forward and tell us about your plans. Ms. Samaniego.
The applicant is not present. This was another one of those cases that's kind of stuck in the TDEC hole.
Okay.
So I would recommend that we continue this to the June 19th regularly scheduled Planning Commission meeting.
All right, thank you. All right. Yes.
The TDEC holes, are these just the TDEC process, or is it generally the
Permit.
applicant, or a combination of?
It's a combination. So all subdivisions are required to come before the Development Advisory Committee meetings, which we have every Wednesday at 8 a.m. in D.W. Wilson. At that time, they're informed that if they're going to be on septic, that they require a septic system review. In order to try to accommodate applicants and property owners and developers, if I have a complete application, I take it, so we can try to get them to the earliest meeting. In the background, on the side, the property owners slash developers have to hire a soil scientist to do a soil study. Then the soil study has to be sent to TDEC to get the approval. And then there's only one staff at TDEC that issues septic permits for all of Coffee County. And then there's another one person that does all of Franklin County.
Ma'am, so depending on if it's a full subdivision, they would have to do the soil samples. If it's just like a one house or one acre, for instance, when I pulled my permits, you just go online and you have to pull a TDEC permit, but then it does take them a long time to send somebody out to assess your site. And they will not issue your permit until they come out and assess. So you have to pay for the permit up front, and then I think it probably took 6 to 8 weeks for somebody to come out.
Right.
I was just, because it seems, I've never asked the question, but it seems like that happens.
A lot of times the surveyors already know that that's coming, so they already have that kind of working before they even come to DSC and before they even file, but sometimes they don't, so that's what the delay is.
I already had mine done by the time I got to them.
Thank you.
It comes to us as kind of a hoping for just in time, I think, so they don't have to wait another month.
Right.
Well, yeah, and we're trying to accommodate people with their schedule. They have closings and whatnot and crews ready to build, so we try to accommodate them and get them to the planning commission as soon as possible.
All right, so we need a motion to postpone or continue this to the June meeting. We got it.
Motion to postpone item number 4, new business to the June. Continue to the June
19th.
June 19th
19th
meeting. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, 5-0. We will put this on continue this in the June meeting. And then number 5 has been withdrawn. The Morris Creek Drive minor subdivision has been withdrawn by the applicant, so we do not need any action there. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Moving on to section 8B, the text amendments. These are public hearings as well. Text amendment ZTA 231, text amendment for the zoning ordinance of sign code revisions. It's on page 20 of your packet. I'll turn it over to Ms. Samaniego for a staff report.
Yes, thank you. Mary Samaniego for the record. So we've discussed this item for the past 2, if not 3 meetings. At the last meeting, the Planning Commission had agreed to and voted on that you all were going to create draft revisions to the plan, to the ordinance, and send those to me. I was going to compile them and submit a new draft. I did not receive any comments from the Planning Commission. So at this point, I'm looking to you, Mr. Schwer, for some direction.
Yes, I'm sorry about that. I actually was a week off, and I tried to kind of remind everyone in that one email, but then it fell through too. But I have had time. I've reviewed this over the weekend and didn't really have any major headaches here. But we can kind of we can entertain a motion to do whatever, and we can kind of go from there. Mr. Berry, what do you have to say?
This is Tullahoma, correct?
Excuse me, sir.
This is the BOMA. We're making, the motion would be to send a favorable recommendation to BOMA, or how?
No, sir. We're at the stage yet where the Planning Commission has not made any policy decisions on these temporary signs. If you remember, I made some edits, but then as far as temporary signs, how long you want them up, the size, the height, the Planning Commission needs to make that decision before you send it to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen.
Yeah, we had a long discussion about temporary signs in the right-of-way.
You had discussed it, and you were everybody was gonna look at it and come up with some ideas.
Well, in that, I say leave the right-of-way how it is. And temporary means temporary. It's currently what?
60 days?
60 days?
70 days?
I provided you a table in your staff report on page 49 that indicates all the different types of temporary signs, what all the different sign area maximums are, what the sign heights are, the number of signs allowed per lot, and then all the different timeframes. So depending on the type of temporary sign, be it real estate sign, or a development and construction sign, or a political sign, yard sign, they all have different size, area, height, and timeframes. So per the Reed versus City of Gilbert, the Supreme Court and the court at large determined that you can't differentiate different types of temporary signs. That there's just one temporary sign provision that would have one sign area, one sign height, and one time frame for all of these different types of, there would be no more different types of temporary signs. You just have a temporary sign that would include all these possible scenarios.
So I would say adopt 100 square foot as the sign area, 8 foot as the height.
It's pretty large. And for the right-of-way, I feel like.
This is for the right-of-way, or this is not for the right-of-way?
This is
This is just
for
temporary
temporaries.
in your private property or commercial property, right?
Well, you can differentiate between, you can have different standards for residential and commercial, and then you can have another scenario of regulations for in the right-of-way, if you choose to go that route.
My preference is to leave the right-of-way as it is and don't allow signs in the right-of-way, would be my preference. And commercial and residential, I mean, your residential, I don't care, as long as it's not obscene, it doesn't block traffic, it's your property. So I would just say, just make it the same, 100 foot, 8 foot, that accommodates that low, the highest one that we currently have. And no more than a period of,
I don't say temporary signs, but it's hard to determine what someone, how long someone can leave that up in their own, on their own property.
yeah, well, how about the commercial ad? Then I guess, what, residential, those size, leave it up however long you want, residential, commercial ad up.
I think the difference is that it's after 30 days, 60 days, whatever, it becomes it's no longer a temporary sign, it's a permanent sign, and so you don't,
Yeah.
At that point, you just want to axe it. You don't want a definition of a temporary sign, I feel like, at that point. I mean, would you be able to encompass it in something else as though it's a different sign?
I mean, you could,
I mean, like a real estate sign, you may have it up for a year. I mean,
Right.
technically, that's a temporary sign, but it's hard to tell them they can only have it up there for 60 days or 90 days or whatever. Just depends on how long it takes to sell the house.
right.
Technically, could you pull it for a day and then put it back, say we had a time limit?
Theoretically, sure.
Yeah, but that's just,
I mean, either you could just not have temporary signs at all and just everything is a permanent sign, but then everything that's a permanent sign falls into permitting and,
so we leave it as a temporary sign for the sake of simplicity, and we just don't have a time limit. It seems silly, but I don't know. Because regulating, how long that sign's been there and all the manpower behind that to watch it. If you're not getting a permit, do you truly know when they put that sign exactly up so that you know the day that it needs to come down? I mean, it's hard to regulate that, I feel like, and then do you really need to?
I see that, but also from the standpoint, we just don't want signs left up all, again, I'm going to separate residential. I don't want it, but I'm sure your neighbors will end up complaining.
HOA can have their
HOA,
own
if you got
rules.
one. But when it comes to commercial, we don't want jankety signs or even
Yeah.
just left up. I don't think we do.
No, I agree. I don't know, it's not,
But we also don't want to make it, it's a tough, we can always change that at some point, right? I know that we don't,
Technically, you can
but, I mean,
change
it's tough, but
Yes.
it's also tough deciding, going from what we have, which is just kind of all over the place, to trying to find a uniform. So we try the uniform for a while, get some feedback from that, and if we find that it's not working,
Okay, that's one approach you could do, sure.
change.
I mean, do you want to, for commercial, maybe do 6 months? And, past 6 months, it technically has to come down. I mean, they could put it right back up.
Take it
but-
down for a day, but I'm okay with, and temporary means it's not fixed, right? But how would we define the structure on temporary? H stakes, wood
Yeah, it's
stake?
usually metal stakes or wood stakes.
So, I
Something that's
mean,
not built to withstand
long-term.
building code, basically.
A banner on the side of a building still counts, correct?
I'm sorry?
Like a banner on the side of someone's building would still
Yeah,
classify as temporary.
that's a type of wall sign, that's something different, yeah.
But a banner not on the
A banner
building.
on
it's
the
just-
Just on some
Right.
T-posts, that would
Stakes,
be
right.
temporary.
So, I mean, what you have in here is one per street front, not more than 70 days in a calendar year. The total area should not exceed 32 square feet, and that's for residential. And non-residential is, you have the same, except for you got more square footage in the non-residential. That's on page 42, it's section A and B and temporary signs right above section
And maybe you
405.
leave the constraints on size for residential, but I don't know that you really go forth and really regulate the time on a residential.
Could we just say on residential, a blanket statement, it can't block line of sight, and it can't, there's already obscenity laws.
I mean, it wouldn't, in my opinion, you wouldn't have to worry about the sight triangle because it's not in the right of way, so it shouldn't be obstructing line of sight. So then, as it is now, in residential zones on any lot, you can have a 100-square-foot sign, and that could be any type of temporary sign. It could be a real estate sign, it could be a political sign, it can be a special event sign, it can be 8 feet tall, and up for an unlimited amount of time.
Just leave that.
8 feet tall is pretty substantial. I mean, you only allow for a fence in your front yard of 30 foot.
Did we change that? No, that was commercial.
No,
That was com- Yeah.
there's 7
We changed
commercial.
the rear, for the commercial. But,
But I mean, like political, you got people, some people put up a 4x4.
yeah.
I mean, if somebody wants to put an 8-foot sign in their yard, more power to them. Their neighbors might complain.
We'll
Free
definitely
speech.
complain.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think maybe that's again something that we can, well, you can already have an 8-foot sign in your yard. Do we get complaints about that? Do people do that?
Yes,
We do get complaints?
yeah, we have quite a few sign violations. And
For
then
8-foot
you would
signs in their
ask me-
yard?
Well,
Huh?
right now, it wouldn't be a violation, correct?
Yeah, if there was a real estate sign in a residential property that was more than 4 feet, that'd be a code violation.
But I think
Yeah,
that's so
'cause
petty.
we have individuals right now, is what you're saying.
I'm sorry?
Because we have individual temporary.
Right, mhm.
Yeah.
Right, that's what I'm saying, right. But then you could have a different type, you could have a portable temporary sign, which is, but you could have it as 8 feet. See, that's one of the legal problems, is, that created this lawsuit.
Yeah.
As with like, well, they're all temporary signs, now you're kind of regulating the speech that's on them, and you can't do that. That's a constitutional problem. So that's why they said just temporary signs, it's just the structure of the sign, it doesn't matter if it's selling a piece of property, if it's saying, vote for Mary, it doesn't matter if it says, coming soon, Mary Steakhouse, you shouldn't be able to read it, it's just a temporary sign, it's not a permanently affixed building code permitted structure.
Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of like maybe public safety and like, kind of like litter to go with it, is if you have a temporary sign that's up 300 days out of the year, and it's 8 foot tall and 100 square feet, and it
Right.
blows over and takes out someone, I mean, obviously they'll be liable, but at the same time, like, is that really necessary
Right,
in a
that's
residential
something for
area?
you to consider, and that's something that other jurisdictions have considered, just the whole idea of visual clutter, if they're not properly maintained, that kind of thing, that you can consider.
I do believe in free speech, but I also believe the visual clutter becomes other people's problems, right?
Well, you're getting into nuisance laws, and so I think that should be addressed in nuisance laws, not sign ordinances. You also run the risk of creating liability by having, and the whole reason we're changing this sign code ordinance is to try to minimize some of our liabilities because it is unconstitutionally restrictive. And so what may be offensive to you may not be to other people. So I don't think that we're in a position to, I think that we need the bare minimum. And if we find an issue later on, you can always come back and say, hey, we need to address this. But I think you need to break it down to bare bones right now.
I mean, for residential, I'd be fine for limiting it down to like 25 square foot, a 5x5 sign or something close to it. Now, maybe 50 at the most. And then having less restrictive time limits and.
Well, if it's residential and it's on personal property, I'm for no restrictions, honestly. And you guys can pass that or not pass it. And the reason I'm kind of staying out of this conversation a little bit is because I know it's going to come to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen and they'll.
Just undo what we do here.
Well, I'm one vote, Daniel, so that, and you are too, but I can have the discussion there. I think it's important to hear what you guys have to say now, and that's why I'm just listening.
Well, but you're an active member of the planning commission, you can do your input now.
And I just did.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'm okay with how you have it written right here.
Which
I'm
one?
not,
That's what I'm saying.
on page 42 has everything we've been talking about.
60 days.
42.
70 days.
Page 40.
42.
Okay. That one, I just took the lowest common denominator of the table that I created on 49. It's on for like residential temporary signs, what's the most amount of time any scenario would allow? And that was 70 days. And then for non-residential, the same thing.
Yeah, I mean,
I'd be more inclined to just not put the time limit on there. I'm fine with the 32 square foot. And then what about the commercial? What do you think about that? I think you have a larger sign, more applicable for a commercial area.
with the commercial, I mean, really, and really residential, at some point, it's like, at some point, the temporary sign becomes not a temporary sign anymore. And so I definitely think
right now, it's
worth
more of a
limiting.
definition to
Yeah.
define this type of sign rather than it, determining you only want it to be temporary, I think.
I see what you're saying. I'm with you there.
We have to define it in some way, and technically, temporary sign's the best way,
Just
I think,
means
to
it's not a
define
permanent
it.
fixed
Yeah,
versus, okay, I'm with you there.
I'm not saying that, it has to be temporarily put there.
Okay, so we want to make, yes, Ms. Samaniego.
Oh, also, I'll bring to your attention on page, just to help facilitate, we have a definition of temporary sign on page 36 currently. I'll just read it to y'all and for the public. A sign intended to display either commercial or non-commercial messages on a transitory or temporary nature. Portable signs or any other sign not permanently embedded in the ground or not permanently affixed to a building or sign structure that is permanently embedded in the ground are considered temporary signs.
So it does have a time, kind of, but not defined.
Right.
Which we would define later.
It's not quantified, which is not permanent.
Yeah. Temporaries, and you could easily remove it, I think is really the basics of it.
Easily. Have you ever tried to remove a bunch of T-post
I
signs in
have.
one
It's
day?
not fun, but it's a lot better than taking a brick wall down, you know? It's doable. You
Yeah.
can get a tractor out there and do it real quick, or a puller.
Yeah. All right, so
I'm okay with the,
you want a motion for,
yeah.
what do we want to do?
Did you say removing the time constraint?
Yeah, before I was gonna make a motion, I was gonna try and lump the residential and non-residential, if we wanted to make a change there, just lump them both together in the same motion.
I'd keep them separate. I would,
Well, yeah, I was gonna, you
We
keep the
wanna
motion
call-
separate, is what you're saying?
yeah,
I don't want them the exact same, I was gonna just put it in one motion.
remove the time constraint on the residential.
You just wanna leave the temporary sign, or do you want to go with, for the commercial, do you wanna leave it, you put it longer, do you wanna leave it at 70 days? Of course, this is just suggestions.
2 months, 3 months.
I mean, think about putting out, you know, a business coming soon sign, or a business closing, or, you know, something like that. You normally see it out there possibly 6 months prior to them building the facility, or
Yeah.
opening this facility. You know, you don't normally see it out, sometimes they'll put it out there only a month or two ahead of time. They try and get as much. That's the way I feel, you know, people can put in input.
Mr. Comer, you got anything?
No.
Okay.
It doesn't care either way.
I'm fine with removing the time. I don't know that I like it, but we can always come back if
I was
we
saying 6
find.
months for the commercial, not
Oh,
taking the time completely away.
So 180 days?
180 days, yeah. We can always, I know that
We can
it's.
go back and, if
Yeah.
they deem that it's that bad.
Yeah.
Okay. So make a motion to leave it how it is in the size regulations at 32 foot for a residential and 50 square foot, well,
Just what changes?
and no time limit on the residential, and 180 days for a commercial temporary sign.
Jenna, what are your thoughts on that?
I'm okay with that for right now. We'll discuss it more when it gets back to us, I'm sure I'll think about it.
Well, what I was trying to, what I would like, I mean, because you do have 2 members of BOMA here, and what I'd like to see is the planning commission, when something does get sent, that it, unless it's just vehemently disagree, that there's some consensus or conversation before it gets there.
I think this is
That
one
way,
of,
it doesn't turn into this big deal,
Well-
us versus them.
I don't think it should be an us versus them.
I
and,
don't either.
The Board of Zoning Appeals thing, we'll get to that in a little bit, but there's certain things that this body is doing that's making it an us versus them, and I do think that with the sign ordinance, if you really want to, you know, collaborate and do some teamwork between the board members and the planning commission, I think this is an ample opportunity to do a joint study session. And, you know, perhaps that's something we may want to visit before moving forward, and it might create an opportunity for both boards to collaborate and get together.
Stop, collaborate, and listen. Yeah, I'm good with that. Are you guys good with that?
This is kind of a big, and also, I thought that this might also be a good thing for us to include the CPDC on, and, you know, gather some of their comments as well, since, you know, this may affect the 2025 plan, or, you know, whatnot. Potentially, you know, maybe we collaborate and then ask the CPDC to give us comments on it as well, before either board passes anything. So that's my thought process.
I'd be okay with that. I know that there's going to be some strong opinions on the BOMA on some of these sign issues, and I don't want it to get into a, you know, this board did spend a lot of time as individuals looking through and reading these things and it to become so I would be amenable. I think we don't want to do that on everything, but this is a pretty big ordinance that touches a lot of
things that affect both boards, I
Yeah.
think. So,
I'm fine with that. I just kind of like, we reached out to the chamber. We got one guy saying, no problems. We reached out to the pub, we've had 3 or 4 public hearings on this now, and we've had 0 public comments.
but I think Joe Orr sent us some comments.
Joe Orr
sent us
sent us
some
some comments.
It was about the right of way, you know, they would like at least a temporary solution.
And I've had some members of the public reach out to me individually that own businesses and, you know, had some concerns. But, you know, I think,
and as Bowie members, we can't talk to each other
right,
about it.
right, we can't talk to each other. So
So we want to have a study session.
I think it would be good to have a joint study session with the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, and, you know, also, let's invite the CPDC for any members who want to come.
So we have a motion to direct staff to
Set up a joint study session.
If that's going to make it,
I don't know yet.
Go smoother, then I think, I don't know if we really need, I can see it causing issues. So if it makes it all go smoother, that's fine.
Motion?
I make a motion to direct staff to set up a joint study session.
Okay. Second.
I'll second that.
Mr. Berry? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? No. All right. 4-1, motion passed. Did you get that? All right, moving on. Text amendment to allow microbreweries, text amendment ZTA 232, text amendment to allow microbreweries in the I-1 zoning district. I will turn it over to Ms. Samaniego, I think, right? Which one of your names is on it?
Can you open it up, public
Yeah, we can.
comment, please?
Yeah, this is a public hearing, so I'll invite the public to come forward and speak about the text amendment change for, yes, go ahead.
So I'm Mike Thornburg, owner of Old Shed Brewing Company, right? So most of you know me, been to my place, but we're looking at expanding, and we already own a 107 Montclair building in the industrial park here in Tullahoma. So we're just looking at expanding, growing our base, our volume, bigger canning lines, those kind of things, more equipment.
Okay. Stop me if I'm wrong in asking this, but where specifically are we looking for this?
I don't understand that question.
Like, something is prompting this as far as like the property that.
That's what it was talking about.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was the address, or? Go ahead.
107 Montclair Street.
Okay.
Where's Montclair?
It is in the industrial park across from these streets, kind of, if you're going towards the DMV, it's across from the Army Reserve, and then across the street is the ammunition for the base. Yeah.
So behind
And then down the
Wagner
street a
Park.
little bit is Citizen Cemetery.
Kind of perpendicular to Highway 55 going
Yeah.
to Manchester.
Yeah, behind Wagner Park.
Yeah.
So,
It's in the industrial. Do you want me to go to my staff
you go
report?
ahead.
Okay, thank you.
Well, hang on. Is there anybody else from the public that would like to speak? We'll close the public hearing. All right, we're good.
Okay, thank you. I think I put in the staff report. Okay, so, the I-1 zoning district currently allows microbrewery uses, but you have to have a capacity of over 15,000 barrels per year. The owner of a local microbrewery purchased a property in the I-1 zoning district to relocate and expand his use. However, his current and projected annual capacity is well below the 15,000 barrel level. I reviewed state statute to see where this 15-barrel threshold came from. There's no state or ATF or any sort of regulation that has that threshold. I did find in some of the planning archives when this was originally drafted, some sample ordinances from other jurisdictions, and those numbers were in another sample, so it might have come from that. At this point, the microbrewery owner has already purchased the property and is zoned I-1. It's not really eligible to be rezoned back to C2. It's in the middle of an industrial park. However, in planning, there's something called the rational nexus, kind of a rational line of thought. If a larger microbrewery, which is 15,000 barrels or more, can be located in an industrial area and have a tasting room and outdoor events and this, then why couldn't a smaller one not be allowed? Kind of similar to the thought process of a couple months ago, if you could have bars and restaurants that have live entertainment downtown, why couldn't you have live entertainment downtown that didn't serve liquor? Kind of the same line of thought. So staff is recommending that all types of microbreweries, regardless of the annual barrel capacity, be allowed in the I-1 zoning district. As a follow-up, there's always concern about taking kind of eligible lands out of industrial and commercial inventories. So I did run this through TAEDC to see if they had an opinion on it, and they supported it. So there was no concern about adding another use to light industrial areas, which already kind of have a limited available capacity at this point.
I have a question. This, it says is the proposed language. What is the current language?
The current language is that it's only allowed in the C2 zoning district. So the definition stays the same. The only actual proposed change is that it would be a listed permitted use microbrewery.
I'm just wondering about that fewer than 15,000 barrels. Why not eliminate the 15,000 barrels altogether and just say that it's allowable in the I-1
Okay.
zoning district?
We could revise the definition, a facility for the production and packaging of malt beverages of alcohol content for wholesale distribution.
From what you said, the
And-
15,000 is somewhat arbitrary anyway.
Right.
So why include it in there?
Okay, so we'll take out the language that says with the capacity of fewer than 15,000 barrels per year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there, to me, there's reason to have a definition of what a microbrewery is that makes it not a brewery.
I would think that would be a max versus a minimum.
As in all breweries, all microbreweries are breweries, but not all breweries are microbreweries.
Yeah, but the way it is, it's gonna be, if you leave it in there as 15,000, it's approving it for over 15,000 and it's approving it for less than 15,000. So that includes the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
But
And I don't know that there's anywhere in that area that you would have, I mean, it's quite an outfit to be larger than a microbrewery.
Right.
There's some very large microbreweries out there.
Well, and I would, not to interject, but I would argue that there's an existing definition under industrial uses for food and beverage manufacturing that would probably be like a brewery, really. Like if Coors came here or some huge brewery, that would probably fall in it. But again, that would be allowed in industrial anyway.
I hope they come here. That'd be awesome. So
I don't know why I said Coors. I know Coors isn't coming here. That was the first thing obviously I'm ready
It would
to
probably need to be.
head out.
Are you ready for a
just thinking
motion,
jobs.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, I am.
I move that we approve the use of the ability of a microbrewery to function in a I-1 zoning district without a reference to 15,000 barrels.
Second.
So, may I ask one question?
You get a second from Barry, yes, go ahead.
So in the title, it says microbrewery. If we're not enforcing that, is it really a microbrewery, or should we just say brewery? What's the definition of microbrewery?
The definition of microbrewery is on page 50, I believe.
Right. tasting rooms, consumption on premises.
Exact definition of
Yeah, no,
the
it's not.
microbrewery. That's
But then you-
ours.
But then remember the opposite way. So microbrewery, it is good to differentiate microbrewery from food and drink manufacturing, which is, I would interpret a brewer would fall under, because microbrewery is currently allowed in C2, where you wouldn't necessarily want a full brewery allowed in C2. So I think it is good that we have that differentiation.
I'm confused, and maybe I'm just, the first part says, currently allows a microbrewery uses with a capacity of over 15,000 barrels per year. But then the definition of microbrewery says, packaging of malt beverages of alcoholic content for wholesale distribution with a capacity of fewer than 15,000 barrels
We just took that out.
Correct.
per year.
That's what
Keep
we're
going.
doing.
A tasting room may allow customers to taste, consume products manufactured on site and purchase beverages manufactured
Yeah.
on site. Brewery facilities that exceed this capacity are considered light industrial uses under light manufacturing. So that's the.
Currently allowed.
Then it's, they're saying really in this definition that if it's over 15,000 barrels, that's a full brewery
Yeah.
facility.
Well, I guess in the background, that first sentence is saying that it currently allows the larger industrial light and manufacturing, because anything.
Yes.
But it says it allows microbrewery, so it would just allow, it currently allows a brewery, not micro, because.
Right, what it's saying.
That's the part that confused me, I'm sorry.
Right, what it's saying is that if it's under 15,000 how it currently reads is if it's 15,000 barrels or fewer, it's considered a microbrewery and it's only allowed C2. Then further in the definition, it says brewery facilities that exceed this capacity, which is the 15,000 barrels, are considered a, quote, light industrial use, light manufacturing, which is
Yeah.
one of our defined uses under,
Yeah.
which is allowed in the I-1 zoning district.
Yeah, I understood the definition. It was
Okay.
the first sentence of the background that I didn't understand how that was relevant, because it's not a microbrewery if it has a capacity of over 15,000 barrels per year. So I didn't know if that was just worded incorrectly.
The
I
only,
wouldn't say incorrectly, it's just the way I worded it. and-
Or- Okay, that part confused me. I'm okay with barrels.
the only change you're proposing here is on page 51 is just to add a line 14 that says microbrewery. The microbrewery definition is already defined in our statute in the definitions, I would think.
It is, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so we don't want to change that. We just want to add another line to 405, is that right?
Yeah, I removed my second.
That's not the motion you made,
I know, that's what I'm asking,
that's
that's
up
the
to you.
intent.
what you want to do.
I removed my second because I want to keep the definition of microbrewery.
All right, so at this point, we no longer have a second.
Yeah, sorry. I seconded it because that first line of the background confused me as to what we were doing.
Okay. All right, so do we have a second for Mr. Cromer's?
I'll second.
Okay. All right, we're back on a second. More discussion? Or are we?
The discussion I would say to that is I think Mary's original amendment here is suffices. I don't think we want to remove the 15,000. That defines what a microbrewery is. So it already allows things over 15,000. So all we do is add microbrewery to the list,
I mean,
which,
it's just clarify, I'm trying to clarify, but I might be making it more confusing. If somebody came into me and said, hey, I want to open a microbrewery, I need a location. I have 20,000 barrels a year, I'd be like, yeah, you don't meet our definition of microbrewery. You're actually light manufacturing use, and you'd be an I-1.
yeah.
So they're already going to be an I-1.
Yeah.
But a microbrewery, and defining that would allow somebody to both be an I-1 and C2.
Bingo.
So we're just trying to add this to I-1, so we need to keep the 15,000 so that it's understood that microbreweries are
Yeah.
also allowed in I-1 along with regular food and drink. Okay, yes, so.
So what Mary
I understand.
originally did versus.
I
versus
understand the
motion.
reason.
Yeah. So I'll vote no to that motion, and then I would probably motion to go to the original motion,
Okay.
or what is presented.
Well, I'll withdraw the motion. I didn't understand.
I didn't either.
I didn't either.
All right, so,
I mean, I'm used to seeing one of these that says, here's the existing language and here's what I want to replace it with.
yeah, that's on the backside.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good question because it helped us determine what is a microbrewery versus what is a regular, full-blown.
Well, this is not all of it, because apparently somewhere in this thing, it defines a microbrewery.
Yeah, that's in the definition section of right? That's where you put
It
this
is in
from.
the definitions section of the zoning code, but I actually provided you the definition for your review on page 50 of your staff report. So you understood kind of what the parameter was.
Okay.
So it cannot,
So,
it seems like I'm not understanding.
So I think how the first sentence in the background, the I-1 zoning district, restricted industrial warehousing currently allows breweries producing over 15,000 barrels per year. That's the part that confused me, was seeing microbrewery, because it's not a microbrewery if it does over 15,000 barrels per year, per our definition.
It's a brewery.
It's a brewery.
Right.
Which is already allowed. And so what this is saying is let's allow
So if
microbreweries.
it's over 15,000, where is it allowed?
In the same place.
Industrial, so it's already allowed in industrial.
So that way,
Well,
we're not
I
allowing.
can't see that from what I see here on this page.
So what it's saying is if you're under 15,000, over 15,000 barrels, you're not going to be allowed in C2. But
Correct.
you are allowed, you can do either one in I1, correct?
If we
Correct.
change that.
If we do this.
Correct.
But you can't do over 15,000 barrels in C2.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, I agree with that, but I still don't see on these two pages here where it says that.
the brewery would fall under line item 1 there. It's 405A1 is food and kindred product manufacturing except meat products. Because that's where it says in the definition of microbrewery, the very last line is brewery facilities that exceed this capacity are considered light industrial uses, light manufacturing, which is, and that falls under light industrial, section 1. Right.
But here, I don't know if we would need to change the wording to microbrewery facilities, because you're defining it as a microbrewery in I1, and then at the end, anything over 15,000 barrels is a brewery facility.
I think the other way around, microbrewery is defined, and then this is a use of that microbrewery.
Yeah, we're just adding it to, the following uses are permitted in, we're adding microbrewery to that list. It's in red, but it is an add. So we're just adding it and saying.
Because microbrewery appears other places in the code, as in like C2, right?
Yeah, I understand that.
So if we change the definition of microbrewery, then we're changing it for what we can do in C2 as well. I don't think we want to do that.
I understand that, but what I'm saying is the last sentence, it calls it a brewery facility, not a microbrewery facility, and you're calling it a microbrewery here.
No. It's saying brewery facilities that exceed this capacity are considered.
Yes, and
So
I'm saying it
brewery-
should say microbrewery facilities.
No.
And not brewery facilities at the end.
No, it's saying if it's well, I see what you're saying.
Because you're calling it, otherwise you just say brewery facility and
I think we're overthinking this.
Right.
They're all brewery facilities, just one's a micro, a subtype of a brewery. If you produce more than 15,000 barrels a year, then you're considered big. If you produce less, then you're not.
I understand that. And
Well, my only purpose in what I said was to keep them from being kicked out of the park when they exceeded 15,000 barrels.
I think we're overthinking this.
Yeah.
Her text amendment will allow this to happen in I2 or C2.
And can continue to happen based on that very last statement there,
When they grow bigger.
if they grow bigger into I1. Okay, I need a motion.
So I would motion that we accept the text amendment as written.
Don't we have to finish the motion?
He withdrew.
He withdrew it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I motion that we accept the text amendment
Second.
as written,
Okay.
as
Motion
presented.
from Barry, seconded from Ms. Amaker. Any more discussion? All right. We'll vote. All in favor of sending us, sending the proposed text forward to the Board of Maine Aldermen with a favorable recommendation? Aye. And opposed?
I didn't get a chance to vote, but I vote aye.
Okay.
I wasn't close enough to the microphone before I got to it. You were through.
Understood. All right, so that's 5-0. 5-0. All right, that brings us to the end of our agenda here. Oh, yes, Ms. Sammy.
I'm sorry. Just based on like the sign ordinance review that we just did in the microbrewery, is there something that I could be doing with my staff report, like going into more detail to help understand the issues or facilitate the discussion?
I think the microbrewery is fine. That first sentence just threw me
Okay.
off. That
You're
was,
Did you say sign ordinance, or did we?
No, just, I mean, I'm asking if there's, like, if you want me to start going into a lot more detail in my staff reports, so it's just, there's a better understanding. Just, I'm trying to help facilitate the planning commission.
I think that would be first off, I think you, like, a lot of this is more than ample for the most part.
Okay.
But like, you know, if there's a hole somewhere, I don't know if you're gonna know where it's gonna be until we start talking about it, so.
Okay.
I think you're doing,
I think
you're
what
doing
Mr.
fine.
Comer's getting at is seeing, you know, if we're going to change the amendment, or change the definition of something, seeing the old definition and the new definition. Isn't that correct? So he can tell the difference, or we can tell the difference.
Right, and that I understand, and I do provide that to you. I wasn't proposing
Yeah,
a
and
new
most of the
definition.
time she has, but
I wasn't proposing
we
a new
didn't
definition.
change the definition here. That's why there wasn't a second.
Right.
I would, if we're taking suggestions, sometimes where it's in red versus green, when we're adding versus removing, I know that that's kind of nitpicky, but red to me screams
Remove.
remove.
I agree.
We do have the strike through on some, but it's red, but it would sometimes help.
Well, red nor green means anything to me.
Green we're adding, red we're removing.
I can't tell the
Adding or
difference.
changing. And I know that's nitpicky, but that's,
Yeah, I mean, typically the
I
strike
got
through
you.
is removal, and the underline is add.
yeah, but when I'm looking through pages and pages, it all starts to just kind of, and I have to wear glasses now.
Okay. So do you want, so things to be removed would be one color, and then things to be added would be a different color?
That would be my preference.
What actually may help, if I may, would be just to provide us with, when we have major revisions like that of code, to provide us with the Microsoft Word format or whatever, so we can look at the original and the marked up and the final version as separate kind of thing, so we can kind of tell the
You did
difference.
for this, right?
She did that for the zoning, yeah. Yeah, and I
Okay.
think, just in general, just if you're like, here's a link to the,
Here's the edits, and then this is what it would look like if you went with the edits. Okay.
yeah,
That was just.
just on like
That's
major.
fine.
just
No,
on
I asked
major
a
stuff,
question.
yeah.
I think you do a great
Okay.
job
I'm
overall.
just trying to,
Yeah.
make sure that you have all the appropriate information, so. Okay, sorry to interrupt you.
No,
I think
no
we're
worries.
about to adjourn.
Yes, all right, so, at this time, we're adjourned from the planning commission meeting, and we will move on to the City of Tullahoma Board of Zoning Appeals. And I will call that to order at this time, and I would ask the board to review, and I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the April 17th meeting. All right, I have a motion from Mr. Berry and a second from Mr. Rice. All right, any discussion on the minutes? Where are the minutes?
I don't think they're attached.
I don't,
The minutes were pretty much the same thing.
I didn't, yeah, I could have sworn, okay. We'll have to postpone that, I guess.
Oh, they didn't print out?
All right. So you withdraw your motion there? All right, we'll postpone the minutes. Do we need a motion for that, or? Probably. All right, Mr. Berry, we'll postpone the approval of the minutes
Until the next meeting.
until the next meeting. Motion from Mr. Berry, second from Mr. Rice. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, 5-0. We'll get the minutes next meeting. All right. Unfinished business, variance 226, to reduce the rear yard setback for an accessory structure from 10 foot to 0 foot at 100 Sims Lane. Applicant is the Greater Faith Community Church. And in unfinished business, what is, I guess, Mary, we'll start with you.
Sure. So this was originally heard at your March Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. No vote was taken. What was determined was that Alderman Allmarker brought up an issue about the relevance of RLUIPA and State Religious Freedoms Act law regarding this case. So the board had directed the city attorney to do some research and report back at the next Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. Before the next Board of Zoning Appeals meeting, a resolution was brought before the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, and I included that in your staff report. In effect, passing a resolution, Alderman Allmarker, you can correct me, passing a resolution that says that based on RLUIPA law and Tennessee Religious Freedoms Act law, that administration of zoning setbacks itself is considered a substantial burden, which is one of the tests to determine if a specific religious institution in effect is being discriminated against by zoning laws. At that meeting, City Attorney Steve Worsham and myself gave our professional opinions that, one, giving a religious institution relief from a zoning ordinance standard would require an ordinance to amend it. Secondly, that there was the assumption or the opinion that religious institutions through RLUIPA law or the Religious Freedom Acts already kind of were exempt from zoning setback standards. Well, and you can correct me, she'll go, already, and that the resolution was passed acknowledging an already existing exemption. So after that meeting, I felt confident in my opinion, I felt confident in Mr. Worsham's opinion, but I realized that nobody's perfect, and I could be wrong, and I could be missing, I'm not an expert in RLUIPA law, I could be missing something. So I asked Sam Edwards, who gave you your training, a couple months ago, and he is the attorney for the Tennessee American Planning Association. I gave him all the background data and explained what happened to him, and I also sent an MTAS to get their legal opinions. And both of their legal opinions are in the staff report as well. And so kind of that's part of this discussion, but then truly this discussion, where it's sat, is whether or not this board wants to grant this property owner the 0-foot setback variance for the accessory structure.
Okay, and it's staff's opinion too, that the staff recommends to disapprove the variance request based on the staff's findings.
Yeah, I mean, it's my professional opinion that the Board of Zoning Appeals, that the City of Tullahoma's zoning ordinance is within its rights to regulate setbacks for religious institutions as in general. Given this specific case, because I demonstrated in my staff report that there was a location to move the shed that would meet setbacks, that there is no substantial hardship of the property. Further, that the applicant stated on the record that he was willing to relocate the shed to meet setbacks. So stating those two reasons, I recommended disapproval.
Thank you, Mary.
You're welcome.
Entertain a motion.
Motion to disapprove the variance request based off of staff findings as well as the legal opinions provided by City Attorney Steve Worsham, Sam Edwards and MTS.
That would be a negative motion, and I don't believe we can do that.
No, in planning commission you can, so, yes.
Seeing no reason.
We need a second first, and then we can discuss.
Right, yeah, second.
Okay. May I?
Ms. Almar, you have the floor?
First of all, they have misconstrued the language in the resolution or what it means. We are not in any way trying to change the ordinance or say that the city doesn't have the right to enforce setback requirements. We are not changing the 10-foot setback requirement. However, a couple of things. One of the things that said it would be for in Sam Edwards' opinion, who's, I think that he didn't have enough information about the resolution or what we're saying. He said that it would be for the church to challenge that in a court. However, it would be, or would have been, but for the City Board of Mayor and Aldermen have now set a policy. Whether you disagree with that policy, dislike it, think it's null, void, that is irrelevant. What is relevant is that now that policy would have to be challenged. That's not going to be for Mr. and Ms. Smith to challenge. Right now, we have staff challenging a policy. Now, I understand this coming back to this board right now because this was already kind of on the books before that resolution was passed. But what essentially that resolution did, that is a policy. It's a policy and a procedure guideline. It is not saying, hey, we're changing the ordinance, or under no circumstance can you ever enforce a variance or a setback. What it is saying is when it is a substantial burden, which is what the RLUIPA addresses, is substantial burdens to religious institutions, that the RLUIPA and the Tennessee Restoration of Freedom Act were created to protect churches and religious organizations from those types of restrictions that create a substantial burden. So the test is it a substantial burden? Now, whether or not you pass this variance or disapprove it, I'm telling you right now, you're setting yourselves up for liability.
Do you have legal opinion on this that disagrees with the legal opinion that we've been given?
Oh, sure I do. I have plenty of them.
Can you present it?
Yeah, I found it in writing.
Mr. Worsham.
If I may respond to that.
Well, I'm not finished. May I finish? May I finish?
Mr. Worsham, you have the floor.
Whoa, hey, wait a minute. That is inappropriate. I was not finished speaking, and you both interrupted me. Chairman, that is inappropriate.
Mr. Worsham, you have the floor.
Thank you, sir. I must disagree with Ms. Almacher. She doesn't have any legal opinions that will substantiate the position she's
Are you calling me a liar, Mr. Worsham? I do have a legal opinion.
I beg your pardon. The Religious Freedom Restoration Act of 1990 does not apply in this kind of a case, nor does the Religious Land Use and Institutional Persons Act of 2000 apply in this case. Those acts are acts that regulate activities of religious organizations and will not allow a substantial burden to their practice of religion. This has nothing to do with the practice of religion of this religious organization. Although we would like to help them if we could, a variance based upon the zoning ordinance is not an undue burden that these particular acts would prohibit. So I believe, in my opinion, I concur with Mr. Edwards, that these two acts, neither the state one nor the federal one, apply in this particular case under the facts. So that they're not going to be any aid to us in deliberating this particular issue. The resolution that the Board of Mayor and Aldermen considered that was drafted by Ms. Almacher, the effect of which was to actually overrule the provisions in our zoning ordinance. And my opinion was then, it continues to be, that if we want to change these provisions, we must do so by ordinance. We cannot change provisions in our zoning ordinance by a resolution. And that remains my opinion, and I concur with Mr. Edwards.
May I finish?
I researched these issues. I researched cases under both of these acts that Ms. Almacher has referred to, and there are no cases that substantiate her position in a situation with these facts.
May I finish?
So let me ask my question to you again.
Wow.
And then you may have the floor. Have you obtained a legal opinion that varies from Mr.
Yes, I've talked to
Worsham's?
several attorneys about this. If you want something in writing, I'll be happy to get it. But you are incorrect, and here is Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act. It literally says it prohibits the imposition of burdens on the ability, it says, let's see, I'm sorry, I lost my place. of zoning laws that create substantial burdens on religious exercises, or to include any exercise of religion, whether or not compelled by or central to a system of religious belief. It was enacted by the United States Congress in 2000 to correct any problems of the federal Religious Freedom Restoration Act. Tennessee also has a Religious Freedom Restoration Act too. So what it says is that you can't create a zoning law. A zoning law could be challenged, right, by a religious organization if it created a substantial burden on them. And so the reason I would say that it creates a substantial burden on them is if you look at their application for a variance, literally it says, please provide a brief explanation that demonstrates the requested variance meets the criteria below. It would cause a loss in church function and use for the community. To me, that is by definition a substantial burden. Now, what we did at the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, and I disagree, and I think it's somewhat insubordinate for our attorney to go against a policy, because our intent is not to change the ordinance. Our intent is to try to limit some of the grievances that we cause on local nonprofits, churches, and religious organizations who are just trying to do good for our community. And also, this particular complaint was not brought by any individual. It was created by someone on our staff. And so what I would say is the resolution, whether you like it, dislike it, agree with it, disagree with it, at this point, we could be challenged and taken to court just because we had a resolution. Mr. Worsham can agree with it, but these folks could take us to court and say, hey, you got a Board of Mayor and Aldermen who created a resolution that set a policy. It might not have changed the ordinance, it might not have changed the law, but it did set a policy, and now that policy is enforceable. And so they would have the ability and have standing to potentially enjoin any decision of disapproval of this. And so why do we want to get our city sued over just allowing a church to conduct their business whenever there were no complaints made? I said, this policy is about enforcement. It is not about changing our ordinances. It is about enforcement. And you could go around this town right now and you could find all kinds of ramifications and different things that need to be addressed or enforced, or where we have selectively enforced different provisions within our municipal code all over this town. And I just think that this is not the precedent that we need to be setting for religious organizations and community and civic organizations who are trying to do good for our community. And the intent of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen was to create a method of relief for these individuals right here. If you wish to challenge it, that is fine. You can challenge that all day long, but it is really not for staff to challenge it. It's not for the city attorney to challenge it. And if these individuals challenge it, they're going to be challenging you guys, and they're going to have literally a policy decision and a federal law on their side. Why would you set the city up for liability, for disapproval, just to make a point because you want to disagree with Jenna Allmacher? Because that's all it is.
So, I will remind just the board that what is actually on the agenda is the variance request. So, any kind of policy or anything like that does not fall
You're subject to the policies of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen.
under this variance. If what you're saying is indeed true, then the variance request is not necessary, but the variance request is here, so we need to, and we found the variance
This
request was
started
to be
before that
found.
resolution was passed. That's the reason it's here.
And the variance request was found to be not substantial.
No,
So,
we postponed it.
Mr. Berry.
Okay, couple of things here. When we originally did this, the applicant stood up and spoke to the point of it would cause a loss in church function and use for the community. When the applicant got up and spoke, they were speaking about the awning that was a permanent fixture. And so the question that they had filled this out in, they believed it was removing the awning, and this is all on video. They believed it was the awning that was the issue. And once it was relayed that it was the not the awning, it was the shed, it was said, okay, we can move that.
Maybe
And that, I'm speaking.
it was functionality. It wasn't part of this.
And that's all on video, right? So I'm okay if this is challenged in court. When it comes to our responsibility to make our decisions, part of our decision-making is there are times where maybe our resolutions or our charter are in conflict with state law, and I believe state law will always trump that. There may be times where a resolution is in violation of our charter. Our charter always trumps that. There may be times where a resolution is in violation of an ordinance. An ordinance will always trump a resolution, is my understanding of how that hierarchy of law works, right? So we have a conflict here in a resolution in what our ordinances say, and it was stated that not in any way trying to change the ordinance, but then 2 sentences later, it was said, the resolution is changing the ordinance by defining what the ordinance means, where that definition needs to take place in the ordinance, not the resolution itself. We've got 3 legal opinions, one from MTAS, I'm comfortable with that, one from Sam, I'm comfortable with that.
None of these are from courts.
One from our city attorney, I'm comfortable with that. We have on video that the applicant was talking about the awning. They believed it was about the awning, so I am comfortable with that. If our alderman wants to press an issue and then cite a lawsuit, I have an issue with that, because that's not in the best interest of the city, and we swear an oath. So I'm say no, I'm a no. Or I'm a yes to disapproval.
You're next, Ms. Schumacher.
So you would be going against literally what the board you sit on said. And here is also, our LUIPA is a civil rights law that protects individuals and religious assemblies and institutions from discriminatory and unduly burdensome land use decisions. The protection against substantial burdens on religious exercise, our LUIPA prohibits the implementation of any land use regulation that imposes a substantial burden on the religious exercise of a person or religious assembly or institution, except where justified by a compelling governmental interest that the government pursues in the least restrictive way possible. That is literally the wording of the law. Okay, in the least restrictive, the fact that we have passed or given variances to non-religious entities, yet we won't give the same variance to this religious entity, will set us up for a lawsuit. And what is the harm here, other than you want to go against me? You're causing a substantial burden on this individual, and you're potentially going to cause us a lawsuit. Why? I am appealing to this board. This church is a small, very small congregation. They do not have a lot of funds. And they did say that moving that building would create a loss in functionality for what they're doing and how they use that awning, because it is next to that awning. I am asking you guys, please. This was already, I would be busting heads right now about insubordination if this hadn't already been on our plate before that resolution was passed, because it was already on our plate. And so I do think it appropriate to come back to this board, but I think if you want to create, some relationship between the Board of Mayor and Aldermen and this board, as well as with your churches and your civic institutions, I am appealing to you. Please allow this variance, and we will discuss, how we want to move further with similar situations. But this will be the test right here. Please. This church, they do a lot for our community. They have limited funds. These people are wonderful, wonderful people in the community, and we do not need to treat them any differently than any other person that we have granted variances to.
Ms. Schumacher, I will acknowledge that, yes, they are wonderful people, and I'm sure that they do wonderful things for the community. I don't think that it is appropriate to say that we are treating this variance any differently than we treat any other variance in here. Each variance had its own merit. This one was found to be not.
When have you asked for actual attorney's opinions from 3 different sources when trying to grant a variance? You have absolutely treated this individual, our Board of Mayor and Alderman resolution, and me different in this case, and you have set them up to file a lawsuit.
No, that was, asking the attorneys different opinions was the action from the last meeting.
Asking Mr. Worsham, not asking Sam Edwards. We didn't ask we didn't ask any of those individuals, and I think that it's all just coming out where you want to go, people want to go against me. I'm asking you to take that out of the equation. Take the fact that I'm for this out of the equation and do the right thing.
Can I?
Yes, you have the floor.
I've been trying to wait very patiently.
I appreciate your patience.
I don't think it's anything against Jenna Allmacher. I think if I would have brought something up and no one else was abreast on the whatever it was, I would expect that we would do our due diligence to make sure that that is current and that is correct. But in this case, I agree with Barry, and I think that, that I read it the same way when they came up there is, if this was the awning for some reason, I think it would be a different situation, and that's what it seemed to be when they first got up there. This is a temporary structure, and it could be moved, and we defined that on the first meeting. And I don't think this needs to be, a financial burden for the church. As I said before, Watson's Metal, I think, if approached, should be willing to help out, and there's probably other people in the community willing to help out for free to move this temporary structure. It's my time now. So
Get a suit.
we planned it all out. Well, not planned it all out. We put all the evidence out there that we have, and I think we got all the recommendations that we could, because we were not abreast of this. And everything here tells me that, that we do not need to approve this.
Everything.
I don't.
May I?
Yes, go.
I'm going to vote to disapprove because because everything I have says to disapprove.
So this will cost them money, and it is a substantial burden, and the RLU IPA, nobody can argue with the fact that the RLU IPA says that if you create a substantial burden on a religious institution based on your zoning laws, that you could be subject to liability. Argue with me all you want to, worship Mr. Edwards, MTAS, that is what the law says. That is what the law says. And the Board of Mayor and Aldermen set a policy and a procedure. And this also, if we need to change about ordinance, I guess we can do that. But we're also setting the stage for what we intend. And you know our intent, yet you're going to take this board and you're going to go against the intent of the policy and the legislative authority of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. And I think that's wrong. And I think when this planning commission doesn't understand why the Board of Mayor and Aldermen doesn't pass anything you want, you need to take a good look in the mirror and understand that that's why, because we have set the policy here and you are going against it.
All right, noted. Mr. Barry.
Our city ordinances, nor this planning commission, created a substantial burden. We did not build that building in the wrong spot. We didn't put it there. We didn't force anybody to put it there. That happened on their own. My church right now is going through a whole bit about building a shed and building some homes for homeless people. And we're taking our time. We've gotten engineers to look at it. We've communicated with Mary. We'll be showing up to the Wednesday development meetings, because that's what you do. We said, hey, if you're a church, you can't build a shed here, and we created some sort of, I think that's the nature of the ordinance, is the city or any government intentionally creating laws that prohibit activities, right? We didn't do that. We didn't build the shed.
they did that. And I apologize, and I say they, and I understand that it's tough. Whoever put it up, you put it there. You allowed it to be put there. We did not allow it to be put there. So there's no substantial burden, as far as the Board of Mayor and Aldermen passing the ordinance. Just because they do something that is illegal doesn't mean that we do as well. And yes, I sit on both boards. And so it is on camera. This has nothing to do
It
with,
absolutely
this has
is.
nothing to do with Alderman Allmacher, because I voted to disapprove it the first time based off of staff comments before we even went down the road of these religious laws and before she even opened her mouth. So this is based off of the fact and my understanding of the law and what's been presented to us.
If you enforce
Period.
it,
You call her insubordinate.
It will be insubordination.
And him insubordinate when
be insubordinate.
they speak, when you're speaking.
use it.
So
Mr.
shut
Banner.
your mouth and let us talk.
Guys,
Mr. Barry.
Do not talk to me that way.
I will speak to you.
Both of you. All right. I think that's enough discussion on this. I'm going to call the vote. We have a motion on the floor for staff to disapprove the variance request based on staff's fact findings. All in favor of disapproving the variance? Aye. Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
Abstained? Okay. 311. Variance is disapproved.
Fine them, we'll waive the fines at the board level. Do whatever you need to do.
Yes.
I would like to ask a question.
Mr.
I don't
Comer,
really
you have the floor.
understand why this was brought before the Board of Mayor and Aldermen when it was still on the table
It
for
was a
us.
resolution that we enacted.
What?
Mr.
We enacted a
Comer.
resolution and set a policy in which this board just completely went against. So that's what just happened. But that's okay. I think I'm done for tonight. And yeah, and you guys didn't even allow them to speak, but.
Ms. Almacher prepared a resolution that presented to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, and I told them at that time that it was inappropriate, that if they wanted to change those provisions, they had to do that by ordinance, and they can still do that if they want to craft an ordinance that would create some sort of an exemption for this type of thing. Under the appropriate facts and circumstances, they could do so, and they could do it. Now, why they wanted to push this through without due consideration of a method that would make it valid and legal, I don't know. But they did that, and but we can cure that if we need to do that to accommodate this church if it's appropriate under the circumstances. But the case law is very clear that zoning ordinances that are applied universally to all people do not create a substantial burden on the free exercise of religion. And the free exercise of religion is defined in the statutes and by case law. And this in no circumstances would burden their free exercise of their religion.
No, I agree that there's appropriate path to resolve this issue, and it's not through a variance. So, I think yes, Ms. Simeon.
Also, just to clarify the record, when this issue was brought before the Board of Mayor and Aldermen as a resolution, I voiced my opinion that I didn't think it was appropriate. I was kind of, that opinion wasn't greeted favorably, I'll say it like that. And then Mr. Worsham gave his opinion. Like I said earlier in my presentation, I acknowledge that nobody's perfect. I myself am not perfect. So when I'm being formally questioned about my opinion, I do further research. So I was the one who contacted City Stewards and contacted MTS to provide that further research, because it's not about, for me, it's not about winning an argument against anybody. It's about providing the most accurate data to the Board of Zoning Appeals and the Planning Commission to make a decision.
I think that's what you did. That's the evidence in front of us.
Okay.
Exactly the same on these same issues, and I concurred with that because the law is the law.
I agree.
Real quick, I apologize to this board. I lost my temper, and that was unprofessional.
Thank you for acknowledging that, and it's appreciated. Thank you. All right, we're adjourned. Thank you.
You got a city rep.